Today, we're going to look at two really old stories that, believe it or not, reveal a surprising truth about healing. They teach us that sometimes the path to getting what we desperately need isn't some grand, dramatic event, but something way more unexpected.
So let me ask you something. What if you were facing a huge problem, something you were desperate to solve, and the solution you were given was just almost insultingly simple? Would you take it? Or would your own pride, your own ideas about how things should work, get in the way? Well, that's the exact spot our first character finds himself in. All right, so first, let's jump back in time to meet a guy named Naaman. He was a powerful commander, and his story shows us how our own expectations can be the biggest roadblock to getting what we need. So you got to picture this guy, Naaman. He's a big deal. He's the commander of the entire Syrian army. Super respected, powerful, a total winner. But he's got a problem that none of his power or money can fix. He has leprosy, which back then was a devastating, isolating disease. And he is desperate for a cure.
So Naaman travels all the way to Israel to see the prophet Elisha, and he's expecting the whole VIP treatment. I mean, he rolls up with his horses, his chariots, a ton of money. He's picturing this big, dramatic healing ceremony. But instead, the prophet doesn't even bother to come out and meet him. He just sends a messenger out with this message: go wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan River. And Naaman is absolutely livid. The Jordan was a muddy, unimpressive river. It feels like a total slap in the face.
And you can totally see his emotional journey here. It starts with this grand expectation of how things are going to go down. When that gets shattered, it immediately turns into pure anger. But then his servants, thankfully, talk some sense into him. They basically say, look, if the prophet had asked you to do something really difficult and heroic, you would have done it in a heartbeat, right? So why not just try this simple thing? And that question, right there, is the turning point. It leads to the most crucial step, humility. He has to swallow his pride, and only then does he finally find healing.
And wouldn't you know it, that's exactly what happens. He goes down to that muddy Jordan River, dips himself in 7 times, and his skin becomes like new. The cure wasn't some magic in the water. The cure was in his willingness to just let go of his ego and obey a simple, humbling command. Okay, now for our second story, which kind of flips this whole idea on its head. This time, it's not an outsider who needs to learn a lesson in humility, but a whole town of insiders who are completely blinded by what they think they know.
So Jesus goes back to his hometown, Nazareth. You'd think it would be this big, triumphant homecoming, right? Nope, it's the complete opposite. He starts teaching, and at first people are pretty impressed. But then they start talking amongst themselves and they just can't get past one thing. They know this guy. This is just the local carpenter's son. And this leads to a really important question. Why? Why would the people who knew him his entire life be the very first ones to reject him? What's really going on here?
Well, it really boils down to that old saying, familiarity breeds contempt. Their ideas about who he was, the kid they saw grow up, the handyman from down the street, it completely prevented them from seeing who he had become. Their prejudice was like a blindfold, and because of it, they missed out on the profound truth that was literally standing right there in front of them.
Okay, so let's pause. We've got a powerful commander who gets healed, and a prophet who gets rejected. What in the world do these two very different stories have in common? Well, the common thread is humility, or in one case, the total lack of it.
This chart really lays it all out, side by side. You have Naaman, the outsider. He gets humbled, he accepts some ridiculously simple advice, and bam, he's healed. Then you have the people of Nazareth, the ultimate insiders. They were full of prejudice, they rejected what was familiar to them, and they completely missed out. One path leads to restoration, the other leads to a huge missed opportunity. So if we were to put a name to this central idea, we could call it humble obedience. And look, this isn't about being a doormat or a pushover. It's about being open enough and brave enough to accept a path that challenges our pride, our status, and our own personal ideas about how things are supposed to work.
And this whole idea of intentionally challenging our pride isn't just a lesson from an old story. For a lot of people, it's an actual practice. In the Christian tradition, for example, it's a huge part of the season of Lent.
This is exactly why these stories, Naaman's and the rejection in Nazareth, often come up during Lent. It's because they get right to the heart of what that season is all about. It's a time set aside to confront the exact same pride and prejudice we see playing out in these stories.
I mean, the whole point is to intentionally take a step back and be humbled, to practice recognizing that our way isn't the only way, and hey, maybe it's not even the best way.
It's like a spiritual workout in letting go of our own ego to make room for something new.
So all of this brings the question back to us, doesn't it? How do these ancient lessons actually apply to our lives today? How do we cure our own pride?
You know, our pride probably doesn't roll up in a fancy chariot like Naaman's did, but it's just as real. It's that moment we ignore simple advice because it feels too basic. It's when we dismiss a great idea just because of who it came from, someone we think is unqualified. It's that deep down feeling that, yeah, we just know best. And just like those people in Nazareth, it's when we refuse to see people for who they are now because we're still stuck on who they used to be.
And so that's the question I want to leave you with. Just like Naaman in his anger, or the townspeople in their prejudice, what simple, maybe even humbling, truth might you be pushing away right now? The path to your own healing could be waiting for you right on the other side of your pride.